What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. I'm Derek Larger. Joining me today is Zach Hicks. He's the lead analyst at Sports Illustrated for the Colts, film guy at Mile High Huddle, and a contributor for Cover One. Most of Colts Nation, you probably already know who he is. Man that needs very little introduction. But Zach, how are you doing, man?
Doing all right, man. Getting into the off-season stuff. And, most people, they would think our job slows down when it gets to the off-season. But for me, it definitely jumps up even more. My production goes up quite a bit because the speculative stuff is sometimes more fun than the actual stuff. So keeping busy, but doing all right, man.
That's good, man. Yeah, you're right. Off season. I mean, it certainly isn't a time off for a lot of us. I mean, we have to keep looking into draft and free agency. I mean, that period comes up pretty quickly. So, and then obviously the news about the Colts just recently hiring Gus Bradley to the defensive staff to be the new DC. What was your initial thoughts, like your initial reaction when you heard Gus Bradley is going to be hired as our new DC?
The couple words that come to mind are, I don't want to say they played it safe because Gus is a good defensive coordinator, but it's a little bit safer than the route they could have gone. They could have gone with a guy like Chris Harris, who has never been a DC before and is a younger guy, but instead they ultimately went with Gus Bradley. But I like Gus Bradley. It's kind of signifying a change that we have seen coming for this Colts defense for a while because they've been inching their way towards the Seattle Seahawks cover three match scheme. Now, by bringing Gus Bradley in, it's kind of the full embracing of that scheme, the scheme that Ed Dodds comes from, the scheme that Chris Ballard praises every chance he gets, and the scheme that Matt Eberflus was kind of starting to inch towards this past year as well. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have one of the forerunners of this scheme that we always talk about here in Indy to run this defense that fits it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, people have been talking to us a lot about, they really didn't want any retreads. They kind of wanted to go that Chris Harris route where it's like, it's new blood. You don't 100% know what you're going to get, but it's somebody that could bring something different. Sometimes that's a good thing, but, when you have to find the kind of DC that you think that your defense should be running, and obviously what Gus Bradley is primarily thinking of running is what, obviously, like you said, the Colts have been trying to get into for a while. Basically, the next question is, what do you make of some of these people who are thinking that he's going to mainly run a cover three zone scheme? Because that's what everyone is thinking because they hear cover three, and they think that, does our defense actually match up with that kind of scheme? What do you say to those people that primarily just think it's only going to be cover three that we're running?
There's no such thing as a cover three scheme or a cover two scheme. And I admit that I'm not the best when it comes to helping people differentiate that because I have always kind of said that Matt Eberflus comes from the cover two tree and the Seahawks scheme is the cover three tree. But honestly, it's kind of disingenuous to call it just that because that's not what it is. It really breaks down to two different terms: middle of the field open and middle of the field closed. Which means middle of the field open means you have the two safeties and there's nobody in the middle of the field. Middle of the field closed means there's the one safety and it's closed off in the middle. The drastic change for this defense comes that you're going from that open philosophy of two high safeties to the closed philosophy of one safety. That doesn't mean that, it's always cover three. It could also be cover one. It could be cover three match. It could be, it could be multiple things. It's not just cover three. It's not a cover three defense. I think a lot of what we'll see is, we'll see a lot more man mixed in. Every bit of zone that they're going to run is going to be man match zone. Eberflus did a great job of developing that with the guys. When he first came to Indy in 2018, it was almost all spot drop. It was what you see on Madden. When you call cover two, you're going to have the guys staying, the corner staying in the flats, the two safeties over top, and the three linebackers in the middle. And they're not going to trail any routes or kind of match. When it comes to Gus Bradley's cover three and with the Seattle scheme and stuff like that, it's going to be a lot of matching routes and a lot of taking away vertical routes by matching. It might put a little extra stress on this defense. It might be a little bit of adjustment early on, but honestly, I do think Matt Eberflus did a good job preparing them for this switch because, late last year, the Colts are doing a lot of man match stuff. But my overall point, calling it just a cover three is just as disingenuous as calling Matt Eberflus just a cover two defense. These are multiple defense, and just because they start with a single high safety or the two high safety, it doesn't mean they're only running cover two or cover three. There's going to be a good amount of variation in this defense. I'm trying to move the Colts nation to middle of the field open and middle of the field close instead of cover two or cover three defense.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I was talking with Lawrence about it yesterday on his stream. He kind of reiterated a lot of what you just stated there. And I think that it's going to be great for our guys specifically in that adjustment. I think that, like you said, Eberflus towards the end of the season started getting better at changing up the looks on the defense, and it started helping the corners out. And it started helping with the fact that our safeties, who obviously were being tested with depth at that point, it was taking some of the pressure off of them. Hopefully this year we'll get that safety room back and they'll be ready for this one. And kind of mentioning off of Matt Eberflus, I've even heard some people mention that Gus Bradley is basically a Matt Eberflus clone. I kind of wanted to know, is there some truth to that, or is there a huge difference in how they design their schemes?
I mean,
I get it's probably because, they both run zone primarily. I'd assume that's probably what they're saying.
I mean, is that supposed to be a negative? Like, I know that there's some people in the fan base that never liked Matt Eberflus, but I mean, the Colts had a top 10 defense 3 of his 4 years. Even if he were a Matt Eberflus clone, it's not a bad thing. Heck, if the Colts were to bring someone, like if Gus Bradley were to replicate a lot of what Eberflus did, that'd be a good thing. You'd still have a good defense or above average defense that forces turnovers. But no, I wouldn't say he's a clone. I think it's a very different scheme. It's a lot more aggressive with the man match principles, and it's more Saban. It's like more Saban influence than it is Matt Eberflus, or Matt Eberflus is more that Lovie Smith type tree. But I guess I could see it from the we don't blitz standpoint, because Gus Bradley doesn't really blitz too often. I think he even blitzes less than what Matt Eberflus does. But when it comes to the NFL, every single defense coordinator would tell you the same thing. We want to get home with 4. We don't want to get home. We don't want to have to get sacks by sending 7, 8, 9 guys. So getting home with 4 is the emphasis of every single defense coordinator. So I don't know, man. I wouldn't say they're very similar, though. I think Gus Bradley it's more predicated on stopping the pass, where Eberflus is a little more predicated on stopping the run. And I think you're seeing more, again, middle of the field close, middle of the field open, and more man match is what you're going to see a little bit more out with Gus Bradley.
With Gus, I mean, I kind of mentioned, the blitzing thing. And I kind of think that might also be the fact that, Gus, with some of the defenses he's had and defenses he's worked with, he's been able to get home a lot more with the front 4 than some of the defenses that Eberflus has had here in Indianapolis. So, even though Eberflus didn't really blitz a lot because that's not his thing, he obviously blitzed a little more because, Gus, when he was with the Legion of Boom, and then you talk about that secondary being amazing, and the front 4 could get to pressure. And even with the Chargers, he built that secondary up to where they were able to make a lot of moves, and they got a few different pass rushers developed, and they started being able to get to the pass rush. Right now, the Colts are not in that position where they can really just say, oh, yeah, we feel confident that we're going to get consistent pressure with Kwity Paye and Dio Dangbo at the moment, or even the Kamoko Toure. It just depends how that depth works. Do you think that has had something to do with it, with the fact that he hasn't blitzed as much? And do you think if the Colts don't make any moves defensively on the defensive line to try to improve that, and they just run it with the same group, do you think that that's going to continue to be something, or do you think Bradley will have to amp up the amount of pressure or blitzes because of who we have on the front 4?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point that, and like another thing to kind of add to your point too, the secondaries were so good with the Chargers, and even last year the Raiders secondary was pretty solid. His secondary at Legion of Boom was great, but also his defensive lines were outstanding too. I mean, back with the Legion of Boom, you had Michael Bennett and Chris Clemens, just outstanding players. Back with the Chargers, Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa. This past year, Yannick Ngakoue and Max Crosby. So he's always had the talent up front. And I'm with you. I don't think the Colts have that type of talent unless Kwity Paye or Dio take that big jump forward. So at the moment, yeah, I would say that you'll probably see him bring up the blitzing a little bit. But I think overall his philosophy is, we'll show blitzes, we'll kind of mix things up, we'll mix our coverages, but we're going to make quarterbacks have to beat us throwing the ball down the field into our match zones and stuff. So he'll mix in blitzes, and he's a veteran coach, so he won't just keep ramming his head into a wall if it's not working. It won't be we're not getting home, so let's just sit back still. It won't be something like that, but. I think his overall philosophy is I want to get home with 4, and I think he's going to try everything to do that first. And then if it comes to blitzing, he will. But I never see that. I don't think I'll ever see that number get up too high. Like I think Eberflus got over 20% only in 2018, and I can't imagine Gus Bradley getting over 20, 25% either. I think it's not. We're not going to see a Wink Martindale type of thing where Wink Martindale was blitzing 50% of the time with the Ravens. We're not going to see that with Gus Bradley, especially with the man match zone that he's going to be running.
Gotcha. Well, we kind of talked a little bit about some of the defenses he's worked with over the years. Most of the time when he got to wherever it is that he was going, they didn't start out that way. The first year or two that he would be there, the defenses were, I think Lawrence told me that every time he's gone somewhere, those defenses that he was in charge of, with the Seahawks defense that became the Legion of Boom, the Chargers defense, which became what it is now, and then obviously the Raiders, the year prior, I mean, they were bottom of the barrel when it came to defenses. And then obviously Gus Bradley helped mature them and put them in the right direction in that scheme. And then they started to become really legit. And obviously Legion of Boom helped that out. The Chargers, we see them as a, top defense every other year. And obviously the Raiders defense, not that bad. Looking at it from him joining the Colts now, do you believe that this, from a roster standpoint and where it is at the moment, this is the best defense that Gus Bradley has had walking into a new team? Or do you think it's not quite there?
I think it depends. I mean, honestly, it's definitely better on paper than when he walked into the Raiders last year. The pass rush isn't, but the rest of the roster, the rest of the team is. Yeah, I'd probably say it is the best situation he's walked into, because a big thing with the defense he's come into is the GMs that he's been working with have been hitting on a lot of draft picks once he came to the fray, and we've seen his defenses start kind of slow. Not that they haven't improved over the year before when he got there. Like you said, they were bottom feeding defenses, but we'll consistently see them in the 20s the year that he would come over, which is a little improvement, but it's still kind of low. But when the defenses kind of get into a scheme a little bit and they kind of get going, that's when we see, the Chargers his last 2 years there were a top 5, top 10 defense. Legion of Boom obviously is one of the best defenses in NFL history. And the Raiders, I mean, we saw this late this past year. Their defense came on and helped them make the playoffs. So yeah, I think walking in, this probably is the best defense that he's had, because like he said in his introduction press conference, is he's got a Pro Bowler at all 3 levels. He's got a defensive tackle, it's a Pro Bowler, a linebacker, and a corner. So it's a talented group. There's obviously holes and there's places they got to get better. But yeah, I mean, walking in, if he can continue to work his magic like he did with his other ones, this should be his best first year on staff of all the teams he's been to.
Yeah, you talked about the Pro Bowlers, and he was saying how excited he is that he has all that kind of talent at every level. Guys like Buckner, Leonard, and more. What do you think the plan is for each of these guys? I know that people are concerned that he's going to turn Darius Leonard into more of a pass covering linebacker instead of in the run game. Like, I mean, me personally, I think that Darius Leonard thrives in both. I mean, we saw this year. I know Darius, effectiveness wise in coverage, he's not as good as he is in stopping the run, but he still gets turnovers, and that's blatantly obvious. I mean, outside of that, I don't know what his plan is for Moore and Buckner when it comes to that. I mean, do you think that anything changes, or do you think the landscape of that stays the same?
I think the landscape for the most part when it comes to Kenny and Buckner will stay the same, especially Buckner. Buckner's going to be that three tech. Um, I'm sure Bradley would do some things to get him some one-on-ones, but I really don't see his role changing too much. Hopefully, with the increased emphasis on the two edge rushers going after the passer, it helps free Buckner up a little bit. With Kenny, again, it'll be more man match. He'll be in man a little bit more, which we saw him have a little bit more struggles with this past year than when he's in zone. But I think he'll be fine. The biggest change definitely does come with Leonard, though. He's going to be asked to do a little bit more in coverage, and that's the thing. Darius Leonard's a great player. He's always forced to turnovers. He's especially in that zone, the zones that he's been asked to cover with Matt Eberflus. But he's going to be asked to do a lot more in this man match scheme to be able to read things a little bit quicker and kind of get back into deeper zones. So I'm excited to see what this means for all three of these guys. Leonard, I think I'm most interested in because even though I think he can do it, he's a very, very good linebacker. I'm really curious to see what he does with kind of, I want to say like a more expanded role in a pass coverage. He's always been great at kind of feasting on bad throws and feasting on quarterbacks underneath, but I want to see what happens when his kind of range is opened up a little bit more. He has to robot a little bit more. He has to get back into deeper zones. He has to be quicker with his reads. I think it's going to be really interesting to see him in that role. And he's been an all-pro every year that he's been in the league, so I don't doubt that he'll be able to do it, at least to a good level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so and then while I have you on the subject, you mentioned the defensive ends and how that's going to be pivotal for this scheme and what they're going to try to do. A little off topic from Gus, but this is a Ballard thing real quick. How much emphasis do you think the Colts should put on going and getting an edge rusher in the free agency? I'm not of the mindset that the Colts should go and draft one because I know you and a couple other people have mentioned that this is a little bit more of a deeper class than what some people are giving it credit for. But me personally, I say, well, you just drafted two of them, and they haven't quite been there yet. I mean, obviously they need to develop. I think drafting one is not what this defense needs to see an instant improvement, and that's what this defensive line needs. And I think there's a couple of guys at the top end of this defensive line group in free agency that could make this team better if you put them on immediately. How much emphasis are you putting on that? Or do you think that the Colts are should just run it back with the group they have and spend money elsewhere?
When it comes to what they should do and what they'll actually do, it's always a little bit different.
Very true.
I would love if they went out and got like a Chandler Jones. It'd be awesome. We would all love it. But the fact of the matter is they're not going to go big fish hunting in free agency. They've never been about that. I know this past year we all kind of got a little excited for it, but it's just never been part of Chris Ballard's focus. He'll get the bargain bin free agents. They'll develop in-house. But I do think, to an extent, they kind of have to be a little more aggressive this year in free agency. And I don't think that means throwing all their money at Chandler Jones, but I think it means like the edge rotation. I think needs a completely different. Like it needs a complete overhaul. You have your top two guys. You have Dio and you have Quiddy. But after that, Ture's a free agent. Tyquan Lewis is a free agent. We have no clue what's going on with Ben Banagou. Al-Qadim Muhammad is a free agent. I think they kind of need a restart with the depth, and it doesn't need to because you kind of missed on a lot of these young guys. Tyquan, Banagou, and Ture. I mean, at their best, they're still kind of misses for where you took them. I think they need to get in some veterans. They need to get in some guys who have familiarity with this type of scheme to play those type of roles off the edge. And even if you bring back one or two of those guys, I just think they kind of need an overhaul there. And I think you can say that about a lot of positions. Cornerback, besides the top three guys, you could probably use a little bit of an overhaul. Maybe going after a Casey Hayward would be not a huge addition because it's not going to be like a $10-12 million a year thing, but it'd be a guy who has familiarity with this scheme that you can kind of bring in. So things like that, I think it's going to be a little more than the bargain bin hunting that we've seen in recent years. I mean, last year it was Isaac Rochelle was their top guy for the longest time. I think it's going to be a little more than that, but I don't think it's going to be, for all the people who are going to be like, oh, go sign Chris Godwin, go sign Chandler Jones. It's just not going to happen with Chris Ballard.
Right.
I'll have to see it to believe it. I'm at the mindset where I'm not even going to think they're not free agents in my mind because they're not on Ballard's radar until he makes a move like that.
Yeah, right.
So I think, a little bit above bargain bin just because this is such a new defensive scheme. And even on offense now, they're going to be replacing 3 coaches, I think, on offense. So there's a lot of changes going on. And I think they do need to get some different types of players in here to kind of revamp the roster a little bit, get some more veterans. But I just don't think it's going to be anything massive or anything huge.
I don't expect them to go overhaul. I don't, unless you take Jim Irsay's words at full value. But I still don't think that's going to be 100% changing Ballard's way of it. But I just want them to sign one guy, one big one, because then that way I can just say, okay, please, just one time. Just one time. I know you made the Buckner trade. I know that. But you had to give up something in return for Buckner. Obviously, we all think Buckner's a stud, but just one time, make one free agent move. I don't care what position it is, just something. I don't care what it is, whether it's receiver, tight end, defensive end, corner. I don't care what it is. Just do something that makes me think, okay, one of these positions you tried and make an improvement in the free agent market. I'll move on from there. I'll trust what you do in the draft going forward to try to replace the rest of it. It's just my issue is that, with a lot of positions that we still need improvement on. Wide receiver needs improvement. Tight end, in my opinion, needs improvement when it comes to the passing game. Left tackle is an improvement. I don't know whether they'll sign Eric Fisher back or not. Not sure on that. My guess is they do, but I'm not 100% sure. Defensive end obviously needs it. Corner, it's nice to get another vet free agent if you're not going to keep Rhodes around for the scheme that you have. I mean, there's a lot of spots, and I just think that Ballard does need to sign a couple of guys. I mean, it seems inevitable to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I think it's going to be a little more than bargain bin hunting this year. But again, I got to see it to believe it, man. I got my hopes up the last 2 years going
after last off season. Yeah, I don't blame you. That was we spent so much time waiting for a move that never happened, and that pissed a lot of people off. It pissed me off for a time being. Especially since now I'm seeing a couple of these guys back on the free agent market that I felt could have helped this Colts team out this year that we didn't bite on, but. Mainly for me, it was Hassan Reddick. I know he may not exactly fit the scheme, but I mean, for $6 million for a guy that got 12 sacks, I thought that was, a pretty good bargaining price. But I'm not a GM, so I can't sit here and say that was the good move. But all right, we'll get back to Gus Bradley here. Which position group do you think benefits the most from Bradley being hired?
I think you got to go with the defensive ends here. Matt Eberflus was a very good defensive coordinator, but he was so predicated on stopping the run that I do think some of these defensive ends suffered as a result, especially the 250-pound guys. Guys like Ben Banogu, guys like Kamoko Toure, just barely saw the field under Matt Eberflus because they weren't good run defenders, and that was the biggest thing. I think with the introduction of the Leo position, with the introduction of the big end, with these guys being able to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback a little bit more, at the very worst, we're going to actually see what these guys have. So I think those guys are going to benefit absolutely under Gus Bradley and to kind of be able to be a little more aggressive, kind of, in a more natural point of where they can be. So I'm excited for this defensive end group, and especially the top 2 guys in Dio and Kwity Paye. I want to see what they can do with being able to pin their ears back and getting after it.
Yeah, the Leo position, we were talking about that yesterday with Lawrence, and we thought that Kamoko Toure would be a perfect fit for that kind of role. Undersized a little bit, but, he told me 20% of the snaps last year for Kamoko Toure, but yet was second on the team in sacks. So, it goes to show you that, Toure, even though he got very little play time, was pretty effective in those snaps that he was in, which kind of makes you wonder, man, why was he not, in the rotation more often? And probably explained a little bit as to why, Brian Baker was under some heat for that as well. I know Matt Eberflus is in control of the run first stopping defense. I understand that. So, it goes hand in hand. Me personally, I'm excited to see how Blackman and Kari fit into this scheme, because I think with this, you're allowing, especially if you're saying the middle closed, I think that I view it as an opportunity for Kari Willis to be more of the guy in the middle of the field and hit some people that come across the middle of the field a little more often, which is great. And then you allow a few more times for Blackman to come back and use that ball hawking ability that he's known for. I just feel like this kind of scheme that we're looking to get into, I think really ties hand in hand with how the safeties play.
Yeah, those two guys are more traditional free safety, strong safety. Obviously, they can both rotate, and they still will. In Gus Bradley's system, it's not, it's not free safety is always the guy over the top. They're just there more often. But yeah, I do think another player that definitely benefits is Kari Willis. He'll be more of a, in a more of a robber look. He'll be up on the line of scrimmage a little bit more. He'll be man to man on some tight ends a little more often. That definitely benefits him more than the too high defense that the Colts had. So yeah, Kari Willis, I think I'm excited to see. Both these guys got to stay healthy though. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That's why I think safety is actually kind of an underrated big need for the Colts. They just need another guy that they can throw a lot of snaps at, and it can't be another Andrew Sendejo type of situation. They need a real player back there.
Yeah.
But outside of that, Kari and Julian Blackman, I'm really excited about them in this type of scheme here. Again, they're more traditional, strong safety, free safety, and Kari's going to benefit a lot from being in the box.
Yeah, I mean, George Odom filled that role pretty well last year when he had to step in. I was kind of mad when Ballard let Chikari just leave, and that kind of sucked because, I thought he was doing really well in training camp. He was liked by everyone on the field and what he was doing. And then just next thing you know, he's gone. And I thought he was the best safety depth guy that we had. And I was like, why are you letting this guy go? And sure enough, got a job with the Eagles. But that's for another discussion. So we looked at Eberflus, what his defense has been like over the years. We saw a lot of times when the Colts were up in late games, how conservative Matt Eberflus got with the defense. It was all prevent. I mean, it was keep everybody back, let them get the 10, 15 yards that they want to, and then just keep everything in front of them. It was all predicated on soft zone, trying to keep everything in front, but never truly like keeping close contact with somebody in that way. And, I think that's what a lot of people got turned off by Eberflus was that, there were a lot of times when, especially this last year, the defense was one of the main culprits as to why we lost, because in late games when we were winning, the defense just seemed to not be able to hold anyone, especially in that Ravens game. You saw that Lamar just pick our defense apart in that fourth quarter. I mean, that was insane. He was like perfect in that fourth quarter. And that was a bunch of different games this year. What improvements do you think Gus Bradley makes to this defense that outside of scheme that Eberflus kind of struggled with at times?
Part of that's tough because I think Eberflus got a little too much of the flack for those collapses.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the players are the ones out there too. And it's not like Eberflus was lining these guys off 30 yards off the ball.
Right.
Yes, it was a little softer. Yes, he was relying on the front four a little too much in these games. But at the end of the day, you also got to get on these players, and you got to look at some of the talent. I mean, in some of these games, Andrew Sendejo and George Odom are your safeties over the top. In the Ravens game, it was Bo Pete Keys that got beat on his one snap of the year for a big touchdown that basically changed that game. So it's tough. I'm not trying to give excuses here, but when it comes to Gus Bradley, the biggest thing is going to, again, be that man match. It's going to be a lot more prevalent. Yes, I do think Eberflus got a little too predictable in fourth quarters. Like the Ravens game, for instance, his way of trying to change it up was bringing an extra guy off the edge, but dropping a defensive end into the middle. So it wasn't really blitzing. It was kind of just showing blitz. And that was his way of trying to mix it up. And it became very predictable on tape. I'm assuming that's what the Ravens kind of saw late in that game. I think Gus Bradley, again, you're going to kind of get his same type of aggressiveness. You're going to get the man match. You're going to get them being up on receivers a little bit more. Is that better? We'll see. We'll see if that's much better, but it's going to definitely be different than what we saw this past year. And hopefully it's an improvement on, like you said, a couple of these games where the defense just couldn't get a stop and couldn't get off the field. And again, I think pass rush is just such a big thing with that. These guys, when they rush four, they have to get home.
Yeah.
Maybe under Gus Bradley, they might be a little more, in better positions, maybe unleashed a little bit more off the edge. But we got to see these young pass rushers take that next step into going into year two, and they have to be just more productive overall, or we're going to see more fourth quarter collapses because everything on defense comes off pressure and coverage. And if your coverage is solid but not great, and your pass rush is awful, you're going to get shredded late in games.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, I think the only other thing I'll ask you is if there's, for those fans who are still kind of iffy on Gus Bradley and the pedigree he has, and, for people he might hire, things of that nature, is there any other words of advice you would give to people in regards to just kind of waiting this out to see what Gus Bradley brings?
Yeah. So, I like you said at the very top of the show, retreads are sometimes an issue in the NFL. It's the NFL has a big thing with hiring your buddies, and I get it. But not all retreads are like that. Gus Bradley keeps finding jobs. He keeps finding work because he's a very good and accomplished defensive coordinator. He's had success everywhere he's gone. Maybe not immediate success, but at least over time, he does get that success. Now, I'm not saying there won't be some lumps and bruises along the way with this Colts defense, but I do think overall we're going to see a positive change when it comes with Gus Bradley coming to this. The players fit his scheme really well. He's going to bring a really, really experienced staff. It could be Ron Miles and Richard Smith, I'm assuming, will come with him as a linebacker coach. Those are guys with, I think, a combined like 60 years of coaching, along with Gus Bradley, who has 30 years of coaching. It's going to be a very experienced staff that knows what they're doing, that has had success in multiple spots. So even if it's not, like I said, it's not going to be day one, they're going to be a better defense. They're going to be the top 5 defense in football. But I do think long term, even in the next couple of years, we're going to see a very positive change for this defense.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, guys, I think that's going to do it for this one. Let us know in the comments what you're thinking after hearing this. Obviously, Zach knows a little bit more about Gus Bradley and understanding these schemes more than I do. That's why we had him on here to help us out, educate me just as much as you guys. Zach, I appreciate you coming on, man, taking time out of your schedule to help us out. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Anytime.
Thanks, man. Hey, again, guys, thank you so much for the continued support. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you as always. And as always, go Colts.